Happy New Year, everybody. Hope we had some great holidays, great times with family, great times watching football, great times enjoying fantasy football. But we're here to talk about it again. So apologies. I kind of took the last 2 years, 2 weeks of the year off to relax, take it easy, unplug on kind of everything. Um, and now I'm working again. Now I've got the hotel behind me, and now we're ready to talk about the GM's League and all the things that happened in the playoffs. Great group to do it here with too. We've got the Vikings, the Bucks, and the Giants representing the NFC playoff field. We have, I think, our third place winner, the Bengals, representing the AFC, and RJ with the 101. So we're going to leave the 101 and off-season talk to later in the week. Talk about a little bit of previews and what we see kind of happening, especially with the change to true position. This pod is more focused on what happened in the playoffs and the upcoming rule changes associated with things that Chris and Jeremy have already discussed, and a couple ideas that are a little bit more half baked that we want to develop a little bit more that may not go live this year because, let's be honest, true position is a huge change for the league. But rather, how do we refine some of these things so that maybe they're ready to go next year, or we test them out and see what they look like, kind of on the side of how the league goes. But enough introduction for me. I'll toss it over and say congratulations to our two-time league champion, the Buccaneers, continuing the 4-year reign of terror out of the NFC South. But Alex, congratulations on the title. Anything you'd like to say as champion? Excellent. That was exactly what I was hoping you'd say, and I don't think anyone could top it. Yeah. Any other thoughts before we jump into it, guys?
It was another fantastic season.
Absolutely. So we'll start at week 15 because we covered the wild card round before I went on hiatus. Kind of go game by game, talk about who really jumped out and performed, who didn't. And kind of any big surprises. I don't think there were a lot of huge ones. I think it was kind of expected what the results were going to be, with maybe an upset or two in there, but a lot of just performing to expectations. Starting with the Bengals and Browns in Week 15, which was named the game of the week by MFL. So congratulations on that. Chris, I would say probably has something to do with the fact 543 points between 544 points between you guys. Is that a record?
It was until the next week, with Bucks and Packers. But yeah, Browns had messaged me and he conceded early on because I jumped out to a massive lead, and then his team continued to claw back all through that weekend. Ended up being a fairly tight race for that one. So that's probably my favorite game of the playoffs I was involved in.
Wow. Yeah, look at that. So you were involved in 3 top 20 matchups this year. Between
right.
you and the Bengals in week were the number one from earlier in the season. You and the Bills from the same week in the season. Holy shit. And then this matchup was number 20 until, like you said, the following week, the Bucks and the Packers trumped it for number 1. But I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves here. The picture photo highlighted here is Jalen Waddle, who went off due to, I think it was Tyreek was injured or out this game, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, he was.
And then you were still riding the Jake Browning train and the return of Justin Jefferson.
The Jake Browning pickup won me both those weeks, the one against the Chiefs and then this one. Like, without him, I'm taking a 0 or a low score at QB. So that free agent QB doesn't matter position is what got me as far as I did.
I would also say your defense. So in terms of your starting defense, I'm going to start at your linebackers. Jermaine Edwards with 25, Daniil Hunter with 26.5, Michael Davis with 18.3, Isaac Yiadom with 16, Rayshon Jenkins with 25.8, and Jason Pinnock with 21.3. That's what, just from those 6 starting spots, like 140 points?
It's a lot of points. And my Winfield didn't even start that week, and he had like 23 points at safety. I just couldn't fit him in.
If he had 23 points, he would have started over Pinnock. But yeah, I mean,
never mind.
Nonetheless,
he had 18 that week. Sorry, he had 23 the next week.
That helped you withstand Montez Sweat dropping 36 for the Browns, because I think that was his 2 or 3 sack game. But yeah, just kind of his defensive depth wasn't there, and Goddard had a tough week that week. But still, 544 points is nothing to shake a stick at. And I made the prediction that people were going to have to score 300 to win, and I was wrong. No one scored 300, so my bad. But still a fun, high-scoring game.
Yep.
All right. Moving along. This is the saddest game of the week. No, not really. My defense had been carrying me for the better part of the year, and I had a feeling at some point my luck was going to run out, and this is where it ran out. My offense actually showed up. However, my defense really just did not, except for 1 or 2 exceptions, where Buccaneers, again, had double digits from every single player on his defense, which was funny because his offense was kind of the driving force throughout the year. He took a 0 at quarterback, and because his defense stood up strong, it was the difference. Again, you mentioned the trades that Bucks and I did. However, Mike Evans and Amon-Ra versus T. Higgins and Noah Brown is my number 2 receiver. I actually came out on top on that. So it wasn't even that trade that killed me here. It was just the fact that his defense decided, Malcolm Kuntz is the featured photo on the recap, putting up 29.2 points. I could not have told you who Malcolm Kuntz was before looking at this photo here. So I'm glad I know who he is now. And good on you, Bucks, for rostering him. But you whooped me pretty well here. It was never really in doubt.
Yeah, I was pretty nervous with my quarterback taking a 0 at that position. But, yeah, defense definitely carried me. But Crosby disappeared that week. Geno, obviously, from you, didn't do anything. He was hurt that week. So, snuck by you.
Snuck by. I'm looking at your path to the title here. You beat Panthers by 42. You beat me by 34. You beat Packers by 70, and you beat Broncos by 17. So I'm going to go ahead and say snuck by is probably a bit of an overstatement, but I'll take the compliment.
It's nerve-wracking every week, regardless, till the end. I think the Super Bowl was actually one of my lowest scores of the year.
I think that's right. It was.
I don't think I ever was
the lowest scoring Super Bowls we've ever had. I don't know if there's a way to check that, but again, 420 points combined in the Super Bowl feels quite low.
Yeah.
All right, moving along to the Ravens and Broncos. This was a fun one because everyone was expecting Ravens to be the juggernaut that nobody wanted to face. And then with Tyreek Hill out and Tua not having his greatest week, just nobody showed up. So, okay, Bill's getting worried. He's playing the Ravens. And then curb stomps him by about, 85 points here. I'll go through kind of the obviously Christian McCaffrey scoring 40 is a nice thing to have, leading the offense. Getting 20 from Easton Stick is nothing to shake a stick at. 21 from Josh Palmer. And this wasn't even the crazy Amari game. This was just a normal Amari game of 20. So that and then a solid showing on defense really just carried the day and carried the day huge for him. And then Packers and Giants. So, again, Jeremy did kind of go, not necessarily all in, but did make the push, and Jonathan Grenard really was a big piece for him, and he has been for most of the last couple of years. I do love that this late in the season, so Jonathan Grenard is the featured photo on the recap because he dropped 33.7 points. He's on he is on Houston. I'm sorry. I got some lines mixed up. I thought he was on a different team. I'll go ahead and drink for stupid here. But, it was the defense and then solid offensive. and a bad game from Buffalo. I think RJ, you may have called that out, right?
Yep.
Yeah, Josh Allen completed 7 passes because they were kicking the Cowboys' ass so bad. They just ran it 50 times down their throat.
I think we discussed that in an earlier pod where a couple of us brought it up, where you live or die by the stack. You're
Yep.
stacking a real life NFL team, which doesn't matter as much during the regular season, but then you get just one of those weeks in the final 4 weeks, and it's a killer.
All you need is one game script to be really bad, weather to be bad, just running game to pop off early, and then just the rest of the stats just don't show up for the rest of the game.
Yep.
And
I also had
yeah.
so there was bad weather in that game, but I also had like Cooks who they couldn't throw the ball either on the Dallas side, so it was like just double dipped of like if it could have been a shootout and like if it was in a fucking dome, maybe it's a completely different story. But yep, is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, and the defense showed up for you. You know,
Yeah,
everyone's in double digits. Had a couple guys crest 20, with the exception of Miles Bryant for Jeremy. He had everyone in double digits. It's just, you know, some of his big games may have trumped yours, and you know, it's a matter of the defense's kind of strength on strength who wins the offense, and it's Jordan Love and Chuba Hubbard. Who'd have thought it?
Chuba Hubbard, who I traded to him
Yeah,
at the
there you
trade
go.
deadline.
Instrument of your own demise.
So that was the other narrative that I was tracking was Demarcus Robinson, who didn't do anything all season, and I had to cut him to get A-Chain back on my roster, and because I didn't realize that RJ was going to claim Boogie Basham. Thank you, RJ.
You're welcome.
But so I cut him, and then he ripped off 4 straight weeks of like 15 plus points, you know, touchdown in 4 straight games or whatever it was. It was so annoying. Luckily, I did the math, and like had I not traded him Chuba, and had I kept Robinson, I still would have lost by like a couple points. So,
So it wasn't that.
yes,
So you had Robinson last year, but correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't he do that last year? Like a very similar 4-game streak where he was just a prominent player right around playoff time.
I think so. And I mean, I had talked about this on the pod at some point this year. Like this was my plan. But like he was a diminishing role, and Kupp was coming back. So it's just like there's not going to be the snaps for him. But I guess whatever. Whoops.
No. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you did the math because I'm looking at it and I'm not sure because, yeah, getting Hubbard in there instead of Jeremy Ruckert, it's about 8 points, and then Robinson instead of, yeah, so I guess that's only 15. So would have made it closer. But, yeah, when you've got to rely on Jeremy Ruckert as a starter right now, that's not a great week for the offense.
Yeah.
And like I said, the 258-46 that Jeremy scored there would have beat the 238-99 the Bucs had against me, and set up Jeremy in the instead of Buck. It would have been a Packers-Giants NFC Championship instead of a Packers-Buccaneers. So fast forward to Week 16, game of the week. Once again, involved the Bengals. Again, only a 500-point game this time, so shame on all of you.
Yep.
But Amari Cooper going absolutely nuclear was pretty much the main decider here, even though both Jefferson and Van Ginkel had great games. Just 50 points from one player, and a good team around it is going to win you most of these playoff games.
Yeah, and that happened early, so I had already discounted the weekend being done, and then somehow my team continued to fight back until it got pretty close at the end. And the way the real-life 49ers game started off, I thought I had a shot until they pulled it together in the second half and pulled ahead. But it was a good game. Like, can't really do when somebody pops off for 50 points. Like you said, it's just the way it goes.
At least it wasn't on Monday night. And a defensive player, maybe a
That's
linebacker.
true. I still lost on the Monday night game though, but he had like 8 guys playing, so the odds were pretty high. Also, yeah, my team ended up scoring fine the next week, but I was worried like even if I did beat them, like my guys were starting to go on IR, and sit out, and yeah, had enough to pull off against the Packers, but we'll talk about that later. But yeah, it was a good win for Bill.
Yeah. And then looking at it on the NFC side, Buccaneers dropping the 4th highest score in league history and the 2nd highest score of this season in the NFC Championship is not a bad way to put an exclamation mark on things. But 340.45 points was more than enough to get him past the Packers, who had 270. Like we mentioned earlier, this is now the highest scoring matchup in league history, which is again, crazy impressive here. And I'd say probably the more impressive piece of this is Bucks dropped 340. None of his players scored more than 30 points. That's the insane part to me.
Yep.
That usually this involves like an Amari Cooper dropping 50 or Christian McCaffrey going for 50 or Mahomes going nuts and tossing 5 touchdowns and rushing for 2 or something like that, or Lamar doing that. Like usually you have a performance like that just everyone else performs well and one person goes nuclear. This is everyone just ate their Wheaties that morning.
Well, he had Malcolm Kuntz that put up 37, but he still would have beaten Packers without him.
Back to back. I gotta look at this real fast. So Kuntz,
yeah, he had like a historic year. He did nothing basically the whole year.
Holy shit. So basically it's like, yeah, from week 9 on, 17.5, 15, 2, 7, 6, 29.2, 37.8, and 4.
The Antonio Pierce effect.
Yep.
Yeah, so I was trying to acquire him before because I thought he was a guy that could get snaps if Crosby went down. So just as a security blanket. But then his snaps did start to go up. They started to put the rookie Tyree, give him less snaps. They give Kuntz more. So that's when I really went after him.
He did spend 8 hours on your taxi squad after you got him from the Dolphins.
Yeah, definitely didn't expect this out of him for sure.
Did you get him at the deadline on November 2nd? I'm trying to remember what the date was of the deadline, if that's about when that happened.
I think it was, soon,
deadline
not
was
far
a little bit later.
Yeah.
Like a week or two later.
But I just want to say, whenever you can be led by Rudolph on Christmas weekend, magic ensues.
You were way too excited to say that.
Been saving that one.
Did you write that one down? Yeah.
Yep. In the notes.
I applaud it.
Yeah, and then Jeremy dropping 270, which would have been enough to beat either AFC team. So, sometimes timing's a bitch. And like I mentioned, just rough luck for Jeremy, unfortunately. But, went in, came in as a wild card, had a pretty great performance, and ended up in the 3rd place game. So nothing to be, ashamed of there. But God, sometimes you get the good luck and sometimes you don't. Which, of course, leads to our Super Bowl, which was the Bengals, not the Bengals and Packers, but okay, this is
it's a good bowl.
That was
this is NFL being drunk.
Bowl.
The people.
The league championship was not the game of the week. The 3rd place game was. So that's what's throwing me off here. Bengals with 219 versus Packers 213. It was literally parallel the entire time. If you look at the matchup scoring on it, is the line's just on top of each other. So I think you may have gone wire to wire, if not exactly. It was close based off of the line, but at no point could either of you feel comfortable with a lead or that you had this in hand. And you've got Waddle on your team, you've got Justin Jefferson on your team, but the picture featured is, of course, Jaden Reed, who had a hell of a game.
That was a really nice pickup at the deadline for you, right, Chris? That was like at least the week of.
That was, the week of the deadline. That was Boy Mafe for Reed, and maybe like a late pick or something else in there. But it was defense for offense, and.
What do you mean that worked out for you? You traded defense for offense,
and it worked out. And I liked Reed, and he was selling him for some reason, and Yeah, found a thing that worked, and now he was.
Untouchable?
I think he's scored more than Waddle for the year. Let me look.
Well,
Yeah, he's my highest scoring wide receiver on my team. Of course, JJ's been injured, but still. Yeah, he'll be here for a while. I say that, and then he's going to be gone by a couple months in the offseason.
Yeah,
Well, he's benefited from Christian Watson being out for like most of the year,
which is what Watson does.
Well,
Yes.
maybe that's fair, but yeah, you assume there's going to be some touchdown regression because I swear he's got like 10 touchdowns or something, right?
there is a massive logjam
As like a slot receiver.
And it's like it's been a revolving door of like who was the wide receiver one. Like at any point it was like Dobbs, Watson, Reed,
Wicks for that one possession.
Yeah.
Bragging about.
But yeah, like between those three, it's I would say keep him. I hope you do keep him for the long haul, but I wouldn't be shocked if your confidence wavers by before
My confidence
week 1.
never wavers. I've never doubted a player I've owned.
Don't you know how this works?
Bijan.
Confident till the moment they're gone.
Hey, you were confident on Warren, and that finally paid off later in the season.
Hey, it did. It did.
So this is kind of a snippet towards a preview of, I guess, next week. But Jeremy's going to have an interesting decision here with Travis Kelce because, of course, he is a free agent this year, $21 million, and his fall from grace has been, probably not as badly felt here because of some of the time and premium rules we have. But at $22 million and the uptick in cost associated with that, does he franchise him again or let him go to free agency? I mean, I'm sure he'll probably franchise him.
Well, he wasn't franchised. That was Adams last year.
No, that's when. So yeah, he was Pro Bowl. He traded for him last year, and he was Pro Bowl and Pro Bowl. And I think, was he Pro Bowl again this year? Do you remember, Chris?
When we set at the end of the year here, yes,
Yeah.
He will be Pro Bowl again. He is tight end 2 overall by total points, right behind Laporta.
So
he's
still finished as tight end 2.
He's 0.4 points ahead of Hawkinson because Hawk didn't play in week 17 and left early in 16.
Kelsey's going to make it easy for everybody, and he's just going to retire.
Yeah, just travel around as a groupie for Taylor Swift.
Yep.
I mean, look, if he can lock that down,
yeah, I agree.
Like,
that's his real Super Bowl.
Yeah, just a 30-second detour. When I was starting to get into Dynasty, I was listening to any Dynasty podcast I could listen to, and one of the guys on one of the shows I was listening to was saying, "Hey, here's an inside scoop here. Travis Kelce doesn't really love football. He's really looking for the second contract, and then he's going to get the hell out." So I took that, not doing any more research, and moved all of my Kelce shares as he got his second contract. Like, oh, I cashed out at the right time. It's great. And that did not turn out well for me. Again, sometimes the quality of the podcast is important. So we appreciate you choosing this podcast as one of the listens you make during the week. We know you have your choice in podcasts, and we appreciate it's us.
We're the best podcast about the NFL GMs League, that's for sure.
Yep.
Yeah. So I guess we should probably also talk about the league championship. Bucks taking down Broncos with a measly 218 points. And of course, I guess Amon-Ra being the MVP here, who is just incredible. I mentioned that he should be in that upper echelon receiver talk the entire year, and he proved it. Basically, I think he had 1 week where against the Bears, 3 catches for 21 yards and still somehow put up double-digit points. So you want consistency, you want playoff performance. Amon-Ra was the guy. So congratulations, Bucks. You fleecing me for Amon-Ra there. Help get you the title over Bill, who probably doesn't have much to say about his league championship loss. The McCaffrey only getting a measly 12 points couldn't have helped. but the 49ers did not ride in to save him like they had for the remainder of the playoffs.
Can I just touch on
Cooper being out was the hard part.
I just want to touch on the that 11-point Amon-Ra game. 6 of his points came from a tackle and a forced fumble. So even when he's not doing it, he'll get you some fantasy points just by effort.
Hilarious.
Yeah, but Bill, you're dead on. I mean, if you have a Cooper putting up an average game replacing Malik Heath, that's a completely different game.
Yep. Like the fact that it came down to 15 points, I was like, oh, cool. So just Amari Cooper every week? Great.
Yeah, maybe if he would have spread his points out a bit.
Right. If he didn't go for 55 the week before, which apparently I needed like almost every single one of those points to get past you anyway.
You have nothing to complain about.
God. But yeah, looking at we talked about the high scoring performances earlier in the playoffs. You get to the league championship, and Bill has 2 players scoring in double digits on his defense, none of them over 15 points. Where it's like the previous week, like, everyone's in double digits. I got 2 guys in the 30s, things like that. And okay, league championship, here we go. Nobody.
Yep. So sometimes you just have those weeks. You know, we all hope to have them early in the season, so that we can bounce back from them. But unfortunately, this one had a couple of these came in week 17.
Yeah. And it was all enough for me too. Like Crosby didn't do anything really special. Like it was great. And I mean,
the big thing was McCaffrey's injury.
Yeah.
He missed half that game, didn't he?
And Ayuk, right?
Well, Ayuk went off for 25 or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ayuk still scored his points. It was the shellacking that the Ravens gave him.
Yeah.
So
Gus scoring a touchdown, Amon-Ra getting that last second touchdown at the end of that game. That all sucked. But it just all sucked. But no, I'm happy to be here. Second worst to second best. I guess I can take that over the course of 1 year.
Hey, and you're in
Honestly,
the money
that
too.
might be more impressive than a repeat.
I don't know that is true, but not in a league this size anyway. But
I mean, more people have repeated than have gone from second worst to second best.
Yeah. That does bring my point up from earlier. You have to be active in this league to even do anything close to that.
Yep. But hey, like I said, congratulations, Bill, for the turnaround. Definitely pulling home. If we did awards like this, we'd definitely pull home probably General Manager of the Year, making that turnaround from second worst to second best. And in fact, I don't hate that idea as something that we could look at adding into the future.
Does this make me trade czar, Chris?
Seriously. What, Bill?
Does this make me the trade czar now?
I'm trying to suggest things that maybe Chris and Jeremy will listen to. This is kind of making it a very convincing, well thought out case to your parents that you should stay up later, and then your little sibling saying, "Oh, me too." There goes my case out the window. Appreciate it. Anyways, we're in the spitballing section of things here. We've got a couple of changes that have already happened in the change log. We have one of our commissioners on, so I really appreciate him being on here to help go through some of these changes and add a little bit more color to them. You can find them in the bylaws change log here, but as mentioned earlier, Chris, these seem kind of more like dotting I's and crossing T's and kind of letting the true position change happen rather than making major format or scoring changes while we have a major format or scoring change going on.
Yep. Yeah, a lot of it is just clarification of stuff that was raised as questions during the year, or things we found in the bylaws that weren't quite as clear as they needed to be on a particular feature. As you've mentioned multiple times, the biggest change is true position coming to the league. With true position is slight starting lineup requirement adjustments as well to accommodate that. Can't say everything's going to be perfect. This is a fairly significant shift to the league. Probably the biggest change that's occurred in the league, I'd say, is going to be the true position stuff. So it's going to be a little bit nuts this coming year. Outside of that, the other thing we added in that's new is we have given a grace period after league rollover. We've added a note on there. If you go over cap after rollover, and this would be the result of a 5th-year option salary coming into play, that would put you over. We aren't automatically cutting the player that puts you over. We're giving you a week to get back under the league salary cap. So right now, the only scenario where this could occur is, again, you have to be under cap prior to rollover. League rolls over, you've got a 5th-year option you didn't extend prior to rollover, but they've got that new salary coming into play that bumps you over. We give you a little bit of time to clean that up, just because it's not immediately obvious where you're going to land if you're not in the different Google Docs taking a look at it. So that's something that's new. Other than that,
so let's just kind of go everything just to make sure that if there's anything that's a little bit tough to understand, we hit on it. So we're moving some repetitive language, like you said. That's clearing things up. You have to have one of each position, but you need to be able to start one of each. You have to be able to start the full active roster. Makes sense. You have to have a kicker and a punter to start a kicker and a punter. And if you don't have at least one player at each position, you're having a hole at the position. Again, pretty straightforward. You mentioned if a team goes over the cap after rollover, then change the time that offseason extensions are applied. Previously, these extensions weren't applied until the conclusion of the rookie draft. However, processing them at the start makes it easier for owners to know how much salary and years they have left when making their picks. So this is a change over the last 2 years. I know you guys have kind of frozen things at a certain time and said, okay, after this, you can declare it, but things don't process. This keeps things a little bit more up to date. Is that just an easier bookkeeping thing for you guys, or?
Yeah, it's just making sure it's clear on when exactly we're going to process it. Again, for the owner, you can still declare it whenever you want. It's just trying to get everything synced up on our side so we know exactly when we're doing that. And the reason we picked that point for the offseason extension is the free agency period would have passed the free agent auction. So those numbers will be in the system so that when you go ahead and calculate the new salaries based on those extensions, we're working with valid numbers on there.
Yep. And then 7G, this next one is one that I'm glad you're on for because I just want to make sure we've got this right here. So adding a bylaw prohibiting trades of picks for nothing in return. So picks being allowed for contract dumping strategy, but picks for nothing not allowed. So to clarify here, this I think probably happened with the 5th round last year where a team didn't want the pick, so wasn't on the clock and gave the pick away for nothing instead of getting some kind of compensation back. My question here as well, and it may actually be clarified in the bylaw that I haven't looked at yet, the RJ and my trade, where we traded, I think it was 521 for 523 or something like that. Is that prohibited by this? Because it's something.
This is something. It's just for nothing. You can't send a pick with nothing coming back on the other side. You could send it for a later pick. You could send it for a future pick. You could, you just can't. We want people to at least. You can't just toss it away, essentially. So even though, sending that pick for a later pick is quote unquote a lopsided trade or like someone's losing value, you're still getting something for that pick. So.
Okay. Yep. I wanted to clarify that. And guys, jump in if there's anything that you're looking at this and it doesn't make sense to you. RJ, I know, Bill, you don't allow yourself to look at the bylaws. So I understand that you may not have questions about this.
Hey, it's my biggest sadness about not playing Jeremy is I couldn't just tell him that if I win, I get to just ask about the bylaws anytime I wanted to. But no, so is there a reason that you guys did it for picks only instead of including players in that?
It's just the fact that it's occurring during the draft is when we were seeing that. And with the player, you're trading away salary potentially as well. So it's for a cap situation during the year. So right now, the only time we've seen this happen a lot was actually during the draft. We want people to prepare a little bit and plan ahead a little bit during that period.
Plus, I feel like it could be a little bit subjective with a player. Is it a salary dump or contract dump, or is it a value exchange in hands? That's subjective if it's a player because everyone has different valuations and opinions of players. A pick, the pick can be anything, but the pick is some value for nothing. So I think that makes some sense. I think there's some, obviously, if you're on the clock piece of it, but there's a reason the penalty is there. Plan ahead before you get on the clock, so you're just not in that situation. It's an easy enough thing to do. A little bit of clarification about the holdout filtering process from 10A and 13G, making sure it's clear about how this process works. All in favor of that, frankly, and we'll get to this with the suggestions part. Wouldn't be a bad thing that need to have a few more holdouts, but I'll save that for that portion. Clarifying when the 24-hour clock starts with taxi, because we did have that happen a couple of times, and I think had maybe one or two premature processes because, the email got sent without the notification going on the board, and as a result, the owner didn't get notified. So good to have some more protections there. And then remove the ability for a Pro Bowl player's salary to decrease, situations where a Pro Bowl player could be extended or renegotiated to a lower salary, again, against the intent of the rule. The whole point is making these players who are really, really good, really expensive, so that you can't necessarily hold on to them, and we distribute the talent a little bit more through the league, so improving parity. So fan of that one. So any other general questions or comments about the changes that have taken place so far?
So
The other-
So
go ahead.
So just like I'm trying to understand the holdout filtering change that you guys did, as well as the Pro Bowl salary can't decrease. So can we still extend Pro Bowl players? We just can't decrease their salary in the process?
Yep, you can still extend them. We had one Pro Bowler last year. It was a defensive tackle. Can't remember which one. I think it was Buckner. Was sitting at like 21 million or something, and he was in the Pro Bowl. But when the Pro Bowl got recalculated, somehow his salary actually came out lower on the Pro Bowler because it calculated at a renegotiation. It's not a holdout where you get like that 10% increase at the time. So you can still extend them, but it won't drop their salary to a lower amount.
Okay. So it
So
still
it'll-
goes through the extension or renegotiation, but
It'll still go through it. I believe I'm looking at the notes he put in here. Yeah, I think we added the
I see the CI.
Yeah, the CI, but I think we might have extended on C as well, where it's using the greater of the two processes. I think before it went to renegotiation, always we did the difference between the two. So it just to make sure that if we've missed some other loophole, which I don't think we have now, you can always extend your Pro Bowl player. We just don't want you to be able to decrease the amount you owe them while you're extending them somehow.
Okay. And the holdout filtering process, what is the clarification that came through here?
Yep. So
go ahead.
I was just going to say, when you franchise tag a player, so there's a couple franchise tags you can use. They drop into the holdout lottery as well. So that got added in for clarification. Don't remember what the other one is on there. Let me see what Sorry, we've got notes all over the place.
So the other thing I would add maybe makes sense. It may not be necessary, but that the Pro Bowl player can't be brought down to a lower salary while he's a Pro Bowler. Because the situation I'm thinking of, and I don't know if this has happened yet, is say, I think it was Joseph, was a D tackle who was in the Pro Bowl last year. He moves to a new team and say his first 8 games are just bad. And he's the D tackle 35 or something like that at that point. He would still be technically a Pro Bowler, but a renegotiation or actually an extension at that point may put him in a category where his salary would come down.
You're
talking about 2 different salary changes. There's a salary change that happens.
Is the change on holdout going from top 3 to top 5?
The change in holdout.
Because see the franchise tag note, because that's bolded.
Yep.
But I thought holdout was only in the top 3, and now it says top 5.
It was always top 5.
It was top 5 in there.
Was it always
Yep.
5? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it was the average of the top 3, maybe conflating those two.
Okay.
But yeah, it may never happen. It may be something that's just understood by everybody. But I would wonder if there's a negotiation change that happens as him making the Pro Bowl is one thing, but then the Pro Bowl status carries through the season. I think that is clear there. But obviously, any renegotiations or extensions as a result of performance after that 8th game, whether or not that's allowed.
I mean, yeah, that CI point should cover all that. So even if they do crap the bed for the first 8 games, like we won't lower the salary. You can add 2 years to them. Like however Kelks could come out lower, but we're like, nope, they stay at their current. Like it won't lower. Yeah. I mean, it'd be very hard for that to occur, but there is the potential.
Are they restricted for more than 1 year to be renegotiated down, or is it like if they miss the Pro Bowl the year after, they're good to go? They can be renegotiated.
So the Pro Bowl tags. So last year's Pro Bowl tags on the players were active through this year. But right now you can't do any extension or anything because this is the week where everything's locked. We'll declare the new Pro Bowl players before we open up extensions. So from the point when we unlock everything and we've announced the new Pro Bowlers, that Pro Bowl tag stays in effect until this week next year. So any time between when you start doing extensions now or extensions next year, that's their tag, and they're subject to the Pro Bowl rules.
So Pro Bowl and holdout will both be announced before you guys open up?
The Pro Bowl gets announced here before this weekend when everything's locked. Holdout occurs at after rollover, the day after rollover, or the day of rollover.
Okay. Maybe I missed this every year, but does Jeremy like record his like results like live?
I don't remember what we used to determine that.
I know that there's like a secret process. That's all it says.
We record the results, I think, somewhere in that massive Excel workbook we've got online. But I don't remember which sheet it's on.
Oh no, I mean like whenever he like tabulates them, like the 33%, like the way he whatever he does he like do like a video to show that it's just like the first run through or whatever?
I remember seeing him do it once.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't tell you if he's consistently done it because like I see it once. I don't have any questions about that.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's questioning Jeremy's integrity at this point.
No, but we just get so many people with random questions. You never know what you need to cover your ass about, you know.
Yeah, so he's got a tab where you end up with the result, and I don't know if he shows when he actually calculates that or not. Nobody held out last year
in the spreadsheet. I know he's recorded it in the past, so I mean we're always for live things here. Maybe he'll let us use it on a podcast.
Oh yeah, he does do it right on the sheet. Yep, he's got a random function in there.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, we're always interested in adding pod content. So maybe he'll let us incorporate that to the off season, so we can live react to anyone who holds out.
I don't wanna. I don't
wanna
see it.
Well, that's why we're asking Jeremy to do it.
Are there more changes coming, or is this it for the year?
There's a couple things. So one thing that we announced earlier that's in place that's not on the change notes here, it's the starting lineup is slightly different, but that was announced back with the Pro Bowl changes. Other potential things that may or may not go in that are floating in the air right now. One is taking a look at the Pro Bowl position requirements, how many position selections there are for each. Again, with our starting requirement changes and the true position changes, doesn't fully make sense to have the top 5 linebackers from each conference going because a lot of them are shifting to DE or to edge. So that might get adjusted around a bit on the defensive side. The other thing that we may or may not announce is we'll be taking a look at the renegotiation process. Nothing changing immediately, obviously, as people have been planning on that 50% up to 50% cut that some people have been very vocal about. But it is something on our radar. We'll make a note if we're looking at adjusting that. And again, that'd be like the two seasons worth of renegotiations off before we make a significant change to that. because I know some people do plan their team or acquiring a player around the idea that they can go ahead and cut their salary down at the end of the year. So we have to be aware of a change like that affecting some teams more than others.
Well, so since I know I'm asking a lot of questions here. I apologize.
It's fun. That's why we pod.
But with you guys trying to emulate the NFL itself with the Pro Bowl change requirements, you guys thought about just doing it based off of like the voting process that the NFL actually does? Like you vote for top quarterbacks or whatever. Like, you know, like doing it the way.
Yep.
Popularity contest?
Basically, yeah. But like, you know, you like if you vote for 4 linebackers and the top 4 linebackers are what you get.
Yeah. It'd be subject to
that would again take away the intent of it. I feel like
that'd be subject to gaming.
I don't mean it like we vote on the players, like, but like if the NFL is saying like the real Pro Bowl vote, like you get to vote for 4 linebackers, then MFL.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And this we only look at the top 4 linebackers. That's your Pro Bowl instead of the top 5. You know, like if we vote for 3 quarterbacks, it's the top 3 quarterbacks in each conference, that kind of thing.
I thought you went with like going off of the like IRL voted players. I'm like,
no.
So somebody's gonna get stuck paying Levante David.
Whatever their vote requirement is, that's what we roll with.
Or that everyone votes for Josh Dobbs or something like that. So I have a Pro Bowl quarterback on my team or something like that.
I don't think that we should vote for anybody personally in here. It should just be where they fall. But
if that was the case, Tyler Huntley would be more than $7 million right now.
Every interpretation of that got somebody scared in a different way.
Apologies, I did not explain that well.
Nope. Again, that's kind of the fun kicking things around here. And then just kind of mention a couple things that were floating around chat. And again, these probably still need to be refined a little bit before they really go in there. And we'll kind of open it up for those on the pod who are interested. Tiebreakers got a lot of conversation today of points for in our league being such an early tiebreaker versus maybe some of the records, divisionally, conference, things like that. If it would make sense, not necessarily to change the tiebreakers, but change the order of the tiebreakers to better match what the NFL is doing. Again, Chris, I don't know if you guys have already talked about that, thinking, okay, we're happy with the way things are, or that just hasn't come up yet.
No serious discussion on that to this point. I know there's been a lot in the league chat, but we're not looking at adjusting that at this point in time.
It should be noted that the person that brought that up is the one that got screwed out of the 7 seed the most.
Well, I mean, he's not wrong. Like, how often? Like, there's no tie in points for right now. Like, you're never going to need a third tiebreaker after points for in a 17-game season.
Right.
It just, in for our league, a 13-game season, it just isn't going to happen. So if the intent is to just end the tiebreakers at 2, sure, keep it as it is. If the thought is, okay, you know, it comes in a little bit later in the same order as the NFL, I think there's a point to be made there. But again, that's up to the commissioners in terms of how they want the tiebreakers to work.
I did like the conference standing idea or the division standing idea, but, you know, points for has got to be relevant for something.
Right. Again, I mean, it doesn't need to be the second thing. Maybe it's the 4th thing or something like that. We have some pretty insane tiebreakers in my home league that kind of go from logical to ridiculous really fast. But points for is usually where everything falls down, especially after the course of the season. Another thing that, again, this is put this purely in the still needs to be thought out more, but I think a lot of people are in favor of it, especially with sort of the way that teams try and build in the league. If there needs to be a punishment or a additional challenge put on teams who finish last in their division. And again, this needs to be ideated a little bit because it can get really ridiculous and really too far, too fast. But also, like, the Steelers this year finished 4th in his division, but still was a top 12 team. Like, if the idea is to emulate, you finished last in your division, your team sucks, you're going to have a harder time signing free agents, making trades, things like that, getting people to come to your team. Cool. That emulates real life NFL. That makes sense. That's not going to happen if you've got a 9-8 or a 10-7 Steelers team that missed the playoffs because the other teams were 13-4, 12-5, and 11-6.
He was 11-6 and he missed the playoffs.
I didn't have it in front of me, but yeah.
Just that he had a better record than anyone in the AFC South or East.
Speaking of the Steelers, it might actually be a reality this year. They go 10-7, don't make the playoffs, and people still don't want to go there. Like, it might just be a thing this year. but no, I think that there's
Speaking
a
as a
level,
disgruntled fan,
right? Right.
We're talking about two different things, Bill. I'm
Yeah,
looking
I
at
know,
GMs, and you're.
I know. No, I think
You're
there's
in
like a
misery.
good mix there, though, right? Like, you don't punish the team like the Steelers who's trying and they just happen to come in last. But like, if you're outright tanking and you know that you're going to do what myself or RJ or Pats has done, and you're just going to like shit the bed and put up as close to 0 as you can, that's the team that gets penalized. Like that kind of shit. Like even the Lions, like they're actually trying to build. They're just not good enough yet, right? But like they started at the bottom, they're working their way up. But if you're just like straight up like I'm selling off, I'm going for Caleb Williams or whoever, that's where you should get like, the penalty on. You have to pay the penalty on free agency, whether that be whatever you sign them for, you add 10% or you lose your salary cap space or whatever it is.
It'd be interesting if we did that as a differential between their points scored to the league average or median score.
It could even, that would be.
Or if it ramped over X number of years. So like if you're consistently,
like if you don't clear 1,500 points in the season,
like if you've been under 1,500 points for 3 years in a row, like see players not wanting to play on your team.
Yeah,
this is fan me talking, not commissioner me talking. Like I don't want to do this work. That sounds terrible.
No, we're to the point of things that are not probably going to be considered for this year. That things that need to be developed further. And again, some of those have come up before in terms of, and I'll have RJ kind of throw his concept out there that we were talking about pre-pod, but a lot of things along those lines that what brings us more, what makes sense for those of us who know football, watch football, and this would emulate it more, but we're not sure how to implement it yet. So how we ideate those a little bit more.
Well, I mean, so the tanking part, if we're mimicking the NFL, who's ever been punished for tanking?
Sorry, I missed that. I missed what you said there, RJ. Can you say that again?
Who's been punished for tanking in the real NFL?
I mean, like by like a fine.
Anyway, any type of punishment.
So
I mean, the Raiders took Jamarcus Russell. That's pretty punishing.
So, for example, the Panthers, real life Panthers, are probably going to have to pay a premium for any free agents they want to sign this year because they traded up at the first pick last year. Their owner is a dumpster fire. Their team is going to earn the first overall pick this year. The team is bad. The culture is bad. They're probably going to have to pay up for anyone to come to that team. So the thought is there a way to emulate that sort of challenge for the bad teams in our league?
No, I mean, we already play inflated prices for free agents, so I don't think there's I don't think there needs to be. We're all being punished for participating in free agency.
Right. So again, this needs to be developed further, but there's something there. RJ, do you want to explain kind of what you were thinking around pricing, extensions, things like that?
Yeah. So
I do have to drop, guys. I apologize, but
no problem.
You guys continue on. Now you can have your true crazy ideas.
Okay.
Maybe you can tempt Jeremy to hop on. All right. Sorry. Go ahead, RJ.
So, retaining players in the NFL is becoming harder and harder. When players perform, they're not going to take any type of discounts and things like that. So I think retaining players and paying players adequately is something that needs to happen in the league. I would like pretty much all extensions to be renegotiations. if a player performed at a top 15, like in real life, they're not going to take less than that. So like, why are we getting to have, players like a Geno Smith for under $1 million for 5 years? Like, no, the second he became a starting quarterback in the league, like if he was making $1 million, he wouldn't be like, he would want a new contract. So I think any extension should be like, we should consider renegotiations, and I think that it should just be harder to retain players. I don't know if that's minimizing the amount of years that could be extended or anything like that, but I think the free agency pool should be a little bit better, because it's not comparable to like the NFL's free agency pool, and like there are players in our league that have a value associated with them just based on their contract. And sure, that may be a thing for like a year, like one season, maybe even 2 seasons in the NFL. But at a certain point, that player gets paid, and like that just doesn't happen here, because like if they're not a Pro Bowler, like they're the 7th best player at their position, like you can just keep extending them every other year for minimal amount of money.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy that Trey Hendrickson is going to be sub $1 million his entire contract.
Right.
Geno's the same thing, but there's a huge age difference there.
Yeah, and I mean, we could talk about like an age limit on that, but I think that's just getting into the weeds. That would be confusing it way too much.
Yeah. Part of me wants to consider the idea of like, do we start factoring in rookie contracts to Pro Bowl once they clear 3 years? Like,
right.
Because like, I don't know, like all these guys, like Burrow didn't finish his contract. He signed it after his 3rd year. Mahomes did the same thing. They didn't even get to their 5th year option.
Right. And this is definitely one of those where we really need to think about how we can do this, because on one hand, I think everyone agrees with this, and I'd call this, and this is no offense to Alex, it's the Austin Eckler rule. He's going to go through his entire career making less than $1 million, and well, Eckler probably didn't make the most money in real life NFL. There's no way he goes through an entire career making that kind of money in real life NFL. So there's a way that needs to be adjusted. Not sure what that looks like yet, but if we're going to add parity, if we're going to make the free agent pool a little bit deeper, we got to figure this out.
Yeah, I agree with what you guys are saying. Am I wrong though in the state that like that's kind of happening already with the Pro Bowl and holdouts and 5th year options? Like Eckler probably wouldn't have got to this point if all those were in place, right?
I mean, we don't know because we didn't.
Yeah, we have no idea. Didn't he have like a 6-year contract when he was like signed at super low salary?
Yeah. I was able to extend him before I traded him to Buccaneers, so I was able to get in an extension to keep him at that low salary before any kind of. I was able to time it right to do that. Which I think,
but he probably would have been a Pro Bowler if that were in place,
right? And at a certain point, regardless of like how many years are on the contract or anything like that, a player's just going to go, no, pay me an adequate salary.
Right.
That's true.
And sure, it's cool. Like I'm very big on the like finding the players that produce insane amounts of points for like insanely cheap contracts. But like even so, we Eckler shouldn't be on the same contract that he was on in 2017.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think the challenge here is going to be, A, how do you adjust it? But B, how do you keep yourself from over-rotating on it? Like if it was – I kicked this around beforehand is an idea of, if you're above a certain threshold at a position, say the 0% threshold on extensions, that if you're above that point, you get renegotiated to – at least an average of those players, and then, whatever the percentage increase is on that or something like that. If you do that, then every player on your team is going to be making $5 to $6 million, which on a 40-player team
Not if
Can't
you
say
have proper turnover and you're buying players in free agency for less than that.
Mhm.
Like, that's why you shouldn't be able to extend half, yes, I understand that we have a certain amount of extensions, but there's still a way that you can just have the same team for 4 years, basically. And, like, that just shouldn't be a thing.
Yeah, Falcons did that basically. That's how we won too.
Do you want undervalued players? Go buy them in free agency or draft them.
Yeah. I mean, what about the idea of like matching an extension with like the real player, like the
No,
IRL player? Like
too,
when Higgins signs his extension, if he's not
too
already
much
extended.
tracking.
I mean, is it like we all talk
Because
about
then it's
contracts.
Jeremy's responsibility to follow every NFL transaction to see whose contracts got changed.
And they're all
Oh, I'm
structured
talking like
different
the big.
ways.
I'm talking like the big names. Like I'm not talking about like, if like
That's why the easiest blanket one is just make everything a renegotiation. Like, blanket everything. The top players get paid the top salaries. The mid-level players get paid mid-level salaries. The lower-end players get paid lower-end salaries.
God, we would have like $70 million quarterbacks in like 2 years.
Okay, figure out the rest of your team in free agency.
Rookies.
Well, I mean, and again, it's one of those where we probably need to look at things a little bit. I think maybe what we do is we look at actual NFL rosters. What's the distribution of rosters on those, and maybe some of our analytically inclined friends like the Lions or other folks who are able to analyze and visualize data relatively quickly can put some mind share behind this, but. How do we do this? But how do we do this in a way that doesn't fundamentally change the league? I think we enjoy fundamentally how the league's put together. We're all finding ways to try and make it better. But we want to improve this. But if we over rotate and, Baker Mayfield's making 50 million, Josh Allen's making 80 million, stuff like that. But every other position's got to make 5. It becomes really hard to put a team together, and you get to a point where you have functional players who can't be afforded that hit the wire, and somebody scoops them up for league minimum. So
I'm having trouble figuring out how we would get to that point with quarterbacks. Like, sure, we would have some at 40 million because it's already established, but it's not like it gets higher and higher. Like, if a mid-level quarterback's making $15 million and you have a mid-level quarterback and you extend him, he's going to make $15 million. Like, I just don't know how we would get out of whack by just position-wise. Like, sure, there's going to be players making obscene amounts of money, but those are the good players that should be making obscene amounts of money.
I mean, you get out of whack because of free agency. Like, the one viable quarterback, if we're all talking about like $30 to $40 million regularly, that one quarterback could go for 40 to 60 or whatever, and then totally screw up everything as far as renegotiations go.
But like, if that one quarterback isn't one of the higher scoring quarterbacks in the league, then he's not going to make an impact.
But renegotiations are based off of the salaries.
So, again, I think it needs to be developed further. I think, RJ, you've got a good point there that maybe I'm flying off the handlebars in terms of what individual players be worth. It may be the alternate where it's because everyone has to get kind of the reasonable salary. You can't afford a good team, or everyone's got to either build the goose teams where you've got second or third players, no real starters. It may add more, but I think it's something that we need to make sure we've taken a good look at, maybe test a little bit before we jump out too far in front of it. And I think you're on board with that. It's more of the how do we tweak it around the edges. I have one that I kind of thought of just before the pod had started that I'll throw out there that could be interesting, but I think it's probably going to get poo-pooed pretty fast. So this, I would say, was probably a wild success as they implemented it in the NBA. We have the doubleheaders to start the first 4 weeks of the season. What if it's either an anti-tanking measure or I don't know what it could be, but included a mid-season tournament to maybe include or improve activity. where instead of sort of the second doubleheader just being a normal schedule game, kind of like how it is right now, we do what the NBA is. We count it as a schedule game, but also it counts towards a record of an in-season tournament. And based off of performance in those first 4 weeks, you qualify for in-season an in-season prize or an in-season tournament like cup or payout or something like that, or benefit that comes from winning that. But your qualification for that is the second game or the doubleheader game or something like that of the first 4 weeks. Again, obviously needs a lot of work before it would be anything that could be put into actual, but may discourage some tanking with teams is another thing. Excuse me, to encourage activity and could be implemented in a lot of different ways. So just one of the ideas that, excuse me, I wanted to toss out there.
Take away one of our extensions, and that's how you can get the third one. And then you get the fourth one for winning your division.
Could be.
Or maybe add a trade extension since it's going to be in season.
Ooh.
Well, I think there needs to be and maybe it's the
extra renegotiation if you win.
Yeah, or again, I think there should be a monetary prize. So maybe it's we up the league buy-in by $5, not something substantially increased, but go from 25 to 30, and not that all $160 that would come from that goes to the in-season tournament, but we bump, say, some of the end of season stuff by $20, and then in season is $100, something like that. Just again, more payouts, more fun, more competitiveness. Teams aren't blowing up themselves by midseason because they might be in contention for that. Like again, I use the NBA one as an example. The Lakers won the in-season tournament. Everyone's like, it's LeBron, Anthony Davis. That's great. They're currently the 10 seed in the Western Conference. So it's not like, of course, the Nuggets are going to win or the Bucks are going to win. It's the 10 seed, a team that currently would have to play their way into the playoffs with 2 wins, won the midseason tournament. So it may not be one of the guys that you think is in there. So an idea that could be developed further, but could be a lot of fun.
I dig it.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting idea.
All right. I know we've talked about ideas the last couple, so a lot of folks have gotten stuff on the board, and that's appreciated. And I think those are kind of encompassed either with changes that have happened already or some of the stuff we've discussed here. But any other ideas that folks have that they want to kind of toss out there to put out there for further discussion, further ideation?
No, I'm happy.
RJ's happy. And we're over an hour. And this may be one of the first times on a podcast we made it over an hour without discussing trades, because we can't discuss trades. But that's going to change soon. So this is obviously, as Jeremy mentioned in his email and his post in the chat, the downtime week of the year. Who knows? Maybe he'll change his mind and let it open back up early. Probably not, because I think he's got to tabulate the scores from the Pro Bowl and things like that. But we'll be getting back into the trading bug next week. So we'll do one more pod this week. I'm going to aim for tomorrow for us to start looking at some of the off-season things, talking through some of the true position stuff in a little bit more detail, and then what we see kind of happening in free agency and trading, and starting to think about what some teams should be doing. So since we can't actually pull the trigger on anything, this is the last chance to kind of look at, the starting line. And I don't know if any handshake deals have happened yet, but it's going to be a wild and crazy offseason, especially with true position and especially with, a massively increased cap, but not to take any of the lead again from tomorrow's pod. So, took a couple weeks off, so I felt we owed a doubleheader. So hopefully we can get some of our lovely hosts from this back on tomorrow. If others want to join us, please do. Any other closing thoughts before we wrap it up for tonight?
Nope.
Just
Let's get to trade
congrats on
talks.
Yeah, and congrats again to Bucks.
And Bill. But both of you had a fantastic year. So
Here's to doing it again next year with a different result.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, it's been fun. I'm ready to do it again next year with the same result.
Oh God, I can only imagine the pain if Bucks three-peats. So
We just reset the league, right?
No, yeah, this is the last championship for the South as a whole.
I will say I think I mortgaged my team more this year than I did last year. I got more work to do this year.
Well, we'll start talking about what that work's going to be on tomorrow's episode. So until then, thanks everybody for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.